Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, as some of you may know, in a former life, I was an IT guy by day and helped run and write for a gaming website called This Is My Joystick by night. And it was a real labour of love, and I made some great friends over there, from Andy Corrigan and his passion for the project, and also Ray Wilmot, whose work ethic really helped me become the guy I am today. But here in 2020, it's time for the arrival of another new games generation. So, did you go Xbox, PlayStation, or do you consider yourself part of the PC master race? The good news is, it really doesn't matter which platform you play on, because it's all great news for gaming, and we're heading towards cloud video gaming too, and Xbox have this almost Netflix of gaming service where you pay a monthly subscription and can play almost anything you want from a long list of games. But where is the game industry heading? What trends are there to look out for? Well, today I've invited Ed White, Head of Analytics and IP at Clarivate, and we're going to discuss their cloud gaming report called Cowboys, Combat and Candy Cloud Gaming, in which Clarivate examined 2,000 plus US and UK gamers who are interested in cloud gaming, and it found that the gaming industry is responding to the users' demands. But I wanted to find out more about what that means and why is it important for the growth of cloud gaming. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to London so we can speak with Ed White, Head of Analytics IP Group at Clarivate. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Ed. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thank you very much, Neil, for having me here today. It's a huge pleasure. So I'm a member of the analytical services team here at Clarivate. And what we do is we focus on using intellectual property data to generate commercial and technology insights for our customers, and how they can exploit these huge content sets to steer their innovation and commercial activity. So this is things like, understanding who they could partner with to get their research onto the market faster, or what would be the most impactful thing for them to be working on, the problems that still need to be solved. It could be looking at what their competitors are doing, and in an increasingly diverse and complicated world where we're seeing technologies combine and come together, and a lot of work is being done in geographies that are very far away. Sometimes it's even answering the question, who are you competing against? At Clarivate overall, we're a global provider of content and services that are aimed at science, engineering, and brands, and essentially helping companies to bring new ideas to market, new inventions to market. And that's all the way from how those ideas and innovations are discovered and created, through to crystallizing them as intellectual property assets that they can lean on, that they can depend upon. And then, of course, how they commercialize that, how they bring that to market under a brand or make a sale of a product or a service. My background, I'm an electronic engineer by training. I've been here at Clarivate for 19 years. So I've been doing this a while. And I would characterize my job and the job of the team as being professional measurers of innovation activity, whether that's research, whether that's patents, whether that's brands. And what we do is we develop the measurement techniques that will most effectively help, the visualization techniques that will communicate those stories and those insights as quickly as possible. And of course, the construction of research projects that will get our customers the answers that they're after.
And you can only improve what you can measure, of course. So I'm curious, who are your clients? I appreciate you probably can't mention too many names, but is it right across multiple industries?
It is. We can't mention too many names, as you can imagine, but we work with very large corporations that everybody knows the name of. Yeah. We work with governments and government agencies. We work with universities, and we work with many startups. So it's really right across all tech sectors and all sizes.
And we're both talking in the UK at the moment, where we're currently locked down, but I do have a shiny Xbox on the way, so I'm not going to be complaining too much. But can you tell me more about Clarivate and the Clarivate Cloud Gaming report that made and what made you kick off this survey?
Yeah, so at Clarivate, we regularly cycle through key technology sectors. You know, these vast content sets that we have at our disposal, we use them to comment and add insight into what is going on. And we do that for things like 5G or compostable plastics, food technologies, gene editing, that kind of thing. And the reason we do that is because patent data is particularly strong for this type of topic. It's particularly useful as a unique information source, and that's because of the way that it's constructed and the information that it contains. I think most people are familiar with the quasi-monopoly side of a patent, you know, that a patent provides, restricting others from using a technology. But they're often less familiar with the other reason that the patent system exists, the major reason that the patent system exists. And that's to record and distribute the baseline of what is known by society today. And, you know, when you go all the way back and you look at the etymology of the word patent, in Latin, it means lay open. And one of the criteria for whether an application for patent protection is acceptable, whether it's valid, is whether it teaches engineers and scientists how to use, how to operate, how to make the invention that patent contains. And the reason it does that is so that society's ideas don't die with their inventor, and that innovations that are useful to everyone don't sit behind a veil of secrecy. And so that the starting point for a new idea or someone attempting to solve something is the current state of what is known, and not 2 or 4 or 8 steps back. But that very fact, that nature of the patent system, that means that patent information contains exhaustive technical detail, as well as the name of the company or the research institution that created it, alongside other data points that infer how much they spent on it or how impactful that particular solution has been on other companies or other research institutions coming up behind them. And that makes it an incredibly useful intelligence source. And that's what we use for our customers every single day. Here in this report around cloud gaming, we've layered in a few further pieces of information. In this case, we've looked at trademark registration as well. And the reason we can do that is because by knowing the names of the companies that have developed technical solutions in cloud gaming, we know who to watch for product name protection. And that acts as a powerful confirmation of industrial change and disruption. And it also it gives us a lot of information about the development cycle times of the companies here. When was the first time that they mentioned cloud gaming in a patent? When was the registration of their cloud platform name? So, when we're looking for topics for these types of reports, we're trying to find areas that are, slightly ambiguous or not well understood or have some complexity to them that we can shine some light on. And cloud gaming very much fits that bill. One of the ways that I think about our work is it goes back to something that Isaac Newton said. His famous maxim was that, if I have seen further, it's because I'm standing on the shoulder of giants. And that's as good a summary as any of what the patent system is intended to provide. And our work is really focused on bringing that elevated viewpoint to as many innovators as possible. And if we can, arming it with a really good pair of binoculars. What's fun about our work is that we get to assist our customers with the really truly important work. These ideas, these inventions, these innovations that they're coming up with, they don't just change the world around us, but they're squarely aimed at solving some of the toughest problems we face. So disease and pandemic is certainly one, but it's also, how the world is going to mitigate or respond to climate change, how transport and energy is going to work with fewer fossil fuel resources, but also fun topics like this one, how technology really enables culture and art.
And I think if we go back to the very beginning of this year, every business across every industry would have been reacting to the needs of their customers. But of course, here at the back end of 2020, a lot of those needs and demands of customers have completely changed, and they've had to adapt, and some have even had to pivot accordingly. So I'm curious, from this gaming report, did it reveal how the gaming industry is equally responding to users' demands too?
To a degree, yes. So one of the things that's interesting when we've been looking at the effect of COVID is that some of the trends that were already there have just been hugely accelerated. So we're seeing, for a good example would be technology convergence, for example. This is a topic that we've been talking about for many years, and we can actually measure. One of the ways that we've seen it is that the number of inventors that are appearing on patent documents is increasing every single year. And that's a telltale that you need more ingenuity in 2020 than you needed in 2010. And that's because you're seeing, material scientists having to work with software developers and, AI practitioners and professionals working in the automotive industry. So that's where you start to see these convergent technology disciplines having to work together. That is definitely something that we've seen accelerated with COVID. Obviously, it's been slightly impacted by the very fact that you need more collaboration in 2020 to innovate just at the time that everyone's just left the office. So that's a little tough. But within the cloud gaming space, we're maybe looking at slightly longer term trends over a 10 or 15 year period. But it's certainly something that's really interesting to look at.
And I'm curious, if we take a look under the hood at all the topics that we very seldom discuss, what is it about domain name and patent information that allows you to see that cloud gaming will take off?
So in terms of patent information, what we can do is we can create a data set that looks at this topic in the round. So we know that there are many different sort of flavors of technology within here. So multiplayer gaming and how that's enabled, or internet connectivity and gaming consoles. We can put all of those things together and create a content collection and just look at the trends within it. But what excites us, I think, about the cloud gaming sector when you look at these data sets is that it's really going to change the way that the gaming industry works. And it's really going to lift the limit that games developers and games players often rub up against, which is, their game won't run very well or even at all on equipment that they have at home. Having games run and processed in the cloud means that users, they won't have to worry so much in the future whether their gaming rig that they've got at home is up to scratch, because that's being taken care of somewhere else. For console players, that isn't so much of a factor itself, but the consoles themselves are expensive. But also for consoles, they themselves are, of course, a major compromise of computing power and capability versus mass manufacture, supply chain, and consumer tolerance over price. They need to be affordable. They have to be very reliable. And for each gamer, their console is a single point of failure. And they aren't going to be that amenable to upgrading it very often. No one wants to buy a new console every 6 months, every year, or even every few years. Cloud is really going to change all of that.
And right now, of course, everybody's talking about PS5 versus Xbox X. That's all the headlines that we're seeing everywhere. But which platforms will be on the rise over the next 5 years, do you think? Are they going to be neck and neck, or do you see a clear winner?
So I don't think that we see a clear winner yet. So if I characterize it this way, we've seen the major console manufacturers, like you say, Microsoft, Sony, Xbox, PlayStation. They have new consoles coming out over the next few months, and I'm sure everybody's got their orders in already. And they are incorporating cloud platforms into those consoles. But we've also seen some of the internet giants, so Google, Amazon, Tencent, also create and launch cloud platforms. So this is Stadia, Luna, and Start. And we've also seen the PC market through NVIDIA, which is a graphical processing chip designer. They've launched a platform called GeForce Now. So that's 6 major platforms. There are other ones as well. Our view on this is that all of them are going to see growth, but success is ultimately going to come from one thing, which is, do they have the player base? And what will determine that is whether the games that players want to play are available on the platform. And that speaks to the complexity of the games development and distribution ecosystem that's still to come. So, we've commented a little bit in the report of this word Netflixization. I'm not sure that we've invented that word. I'm sure it's been used somewhere else, but we can see what's happened in video content streaming and the disruption that's maybe caused in traditional broadcasting. We do expect that to to come to the gaming world. But equally, just as Amazon TV, Disney Plus, Netflix are dependent on content, these cloud platforms, cloud gaming platforms are going to be dependent on it as well. But we strongly believe that this space has only just got started. I mean, right now, the console manufacturers are offering a hybrid cloud model. So when you unpack your PlayStation 5, you will be given the choice to whether a game that you've bought, whether you want to download it and run it on your PlayStation, or whether you want to stream the game via their cloud platform. Stadia allows users to claim access to a game that they've already bought. And what this does is this maintains the kind of status quo. It maintains this hybrid model. And therefore, it maintains the sales revenues of games developers and publishers. That's the piece that's likely to change next.
And I was looking at some of the stats in that report. One was 77% of US gamers cite they are gaming more since the pandemic. Probably that's quite unsurprising, because if people have got very little else to do, they're going to invest more time in that, especially as those screen time bans have been lifted by many parents too. But did that or anything in the report surprise you?
I think those statistics I don't think are that surprising, right? Yeah. I think that where we were surprised, or at least were taken aback, was the variance in trend between how the industry works and what they're focusing on, and where this technology really came from. So when we look back at this data set as a whole, one of the major findings of our report is that there's been a very large commercial model evolution that has paved the way for cloud. And you can see it extremely clearly in our data. So in the early 2000s, you have the coming to market of these subscription models for online game playing. So this is games like Second Life, World of Warcraft, EVE Online. I'm sure we remember these from many years ago. Yeah. And what it introduced was players paying a regular monthly fee to access that game world alongside others. And this is the bringing to market of massively multiplayer online games. But then in 2006, with smartphones and tablets, you start to get mobile gaming. And mobile gaming is still probably the fastest growing sector in the gaming industry as a whole. But what it introduced was further round of new business models like in-game purchases to drive revenue. So these games, they may be free, or they may be $1 or $2 from the App Store or Google Play. But players are buying add-ons then inside the game. And these models have somewhat controversially gone back into console and PC gaming through things like free-to-play games. So this is something like Fortnite, or even quite expensive paid games where you can buy items to use in the game. So this might be a better armor or a better sword to make your character better. But it can also be things like paint jobs or outfits that are purely aesthetic. And of course, you have things like the notorious loot box model, where you pay to get a box full of potential goodies or potential not goodies. But the proliferation of all of these revenue models, and we see it, there's this big peak around commercial models in the patent data. And the reason it paved the way is because it educated and to an extent inured the gaming market, game players, to pay for gameplay in many more diverse ways than simply a $40 or $80 sticker price for a set piece game. So as cloud changes the way the gaming market works, and it will, these models are going to become more important. Games developers are potentially going to have to be a bit more inventive to maintain the levels of sales and revenues that they've historically enjoyed. But alongside that, the cloud platform companies will have a huge interest in making sure that blockbuster games are still developed, still funded, and funded in such a way that they can develop these AAA rated games.
And something else that's fascinated me this year is that traditional sports and leagues have been shut down and crowds turned away from those that are allowed to continue. And by contrast, I think some 70% of global gamers have enrolled in competitive gaming and competitions and leagues, etc. So it does sound like, looking at your report, that there's an incredibly bright future for esports, right?
Indeed. And, when you look at the video gaming market as a whole, we were surprised by the fact it's a $140 billion industry. It's absolutely enormous. And what's interesting about this effect is that it's potentially a little bit of a hidden pastime, right? So we had this when we were putting the report together as a team. In that, one of the fun things was that we could very quickly work out who the gamers were within the company, but that hadn't really been a notable fact amongst colleagues before. And I guess that this is one of the changing areas that's useful for us to highlight. This is, it's that $140 billion industry means that this is a hobby and a passion for a lot of people. But perhaps we don't talk about it too much in a corporate setting. You have this, maybe you think about it in terms of the cliched hobbies and interest section of a CV or a resume. They'll often talk about maybe perceived more wholesome or more acceptable pastimes, but not too often gaming. And so if we can normalize that a bit, I think that this is a good thing. Clearly, many people are enjoying video games, and the esports movement is just one aspect of that.
And you did mention a few moments ago, obviously Microsoft are making moves with its Netflix of gaming style approach, and others are joining that too. But how do you see the future of cloud gaming? And do you think that is also an area of interest for emerging tech brands all over the world too at the same time?
Yeah, so yes is the answer, the quick answer, but a slightly sort of longer answer, Neil, would be around looking at these cycles, right? These cycles that we see. So almost all technologies, whether it's cloud gaming or anything else, they go through a pretty regular and pretty predictable cycle, a kind of law of innovation. You get initial levels of development followed by a rapid rush through to a tailing off of that activity as the major problems start to become solved, or that industry or that market is moving on to another technology which will repeat that cycle. So if we apply that life cycle approach to cloud gaming, we can look at what's tough to solve or what's still heading towards a solution. And when we get into that, the thorniest problems in cloud are all about performance and playability. Can the game be streamed in such a way that the player cannot tell that it's being run in the cloud? All of us are pretty familiar with video content buffering, that few seconds of a rotating icon as the video stream gets loaded into the sort of local memory of whatever it is that you're playing it on. And that's fine for a 30-second clip or a 2-hour movie. Nobody minds that, right? It doesn't affect your enjoyment of it. But it is completely unacceptable in a game environment. Yeah. You need to remember that a game has to react to the player very, very quickly. You move a thumbstick, you press a button, you change the video stream that needs to be sent back to you. So when we look at that as a discrete sector, a discrete trend within the data set, what we see is consistent, flat, year-over-year patent activity. There's no peak, there's no rush of activity. And so if that law of innovation, if almost all other technology trends teach us anything, that finding implies that there is more to come. It will peak, but it hasn't yet. Some of the other early signals that we see surrounds games that are specifically designed to exploit the cloud architecture. So this would be moving on from that hybrid model of whether you want to run the game locally or whether you want to run it via the cloud. These will be games that give you no choice as to whether the game is downloaded and run locally or in the cloud, because it can't be. It's too big, it's too complex, it's too dynamic to be packaged as a software download. And then right next to that in our forecast models is things like augmented reality and virtual reality. And that's pretty exciting because that's where the limit really is lifted on what games developers can do. One of the other things that we see is that there's a difference in approach between the activities of game developers and publishers in Asia versus the rest of the world. In Asia, some of these companies have invested in the technologies themselves, and that implies that they may offer point solutions for their games or their ecosystems of games on their own platform. And there is less of that in Western gaming houses. And then there are the bigger sort of market movements out there, right? So there are firms inside our patent data sets but have publicly disclosed that they are avoiding cloud platform right now. And that would be Nintendo. They have publicly taken a wait and see approach, pointing towards maybe market disruption and rationalization. And then there's another version of that as well, which is companies that have significant player bases that aren't in cloud at all, such as Valve and their Steam PC game download platform. Steam is a really interesting one from the perspective of, if having the player base equals success, you can quickly forecast some potential major market moves here. Amazon and Google have great technology heritage in content streaming, but are new to the video game industry, and that makes Steam look pretty attractive, particularly if, as a synergy, Steam has not gone down the cloud route and can get that from Amazon or Google or somebody else. But it could also be a good move for Sony or Microsoft as a competitive edge, or moving into a way that intermingles console and PC gaming. And maybe that is one of the biggest future outcomes here, that currently console gaming, PC gaming, mobile gaming are all siloed. Cloud dilutes that, maybe even washes it away completely. So from a company that's out there thinking about entering this market, or from an investor perspective, there is a lot of opportunity in the ambiguity of this future market. We've shone some light on the dynamics here, who's gone which route, who could enter, who's here now, but there is a lot more to come.
Fantastic. Well, a huge thank you for joining me today and sharing so many of these valuable insights. But for everyone listening, can you remind them where they can find you online and access this Cowboys Combat and Candy Cloud Gaming report, and also contact your team if they are left with any questions?
Absolutely. So the single point for all of this would be clarivate.com, and we'd love to take questions and any interest.
I think it's such an exciting space at the moment with the cloud gaming, new consoles, esports, augmented reality, virtual reality. And like you said, there's just so many opportunities looking forward in this space too. But thanks for shining a big light on all that for us. Hopefully we can meet again next year. We'll have another conversation about where all this is progressing. But thanks for sharing it with me today.
Thanks very much, Neil.
There's a few interesting data points from that gaming survey, such as 70% of US gamers have enrolled in competitive gaming, competition or league. So esports is obviously a huge growth area at the moment. And also 77% of gamers cited that they are gaming much more since the pandemic. Again, makes perfect sense. Nobody can go anywhere or do anything. So it's a nice way to kick back and relax, and time does fly by when you're playing video games, as I know all too well. And also, that cloud gamers spend more in in-game purchases per week than non-cloud gamers, which is incredibly interesting too. But I will add a link to that report on the blog post that will accompany this podcast over at techblogwriter.co.uk. Just head for podcasts. You should find this episode along with 1,400 other interviews too. But let me know your thoughts about the gaming industry, the future, consoles or platforms of choice, and what games you're looking forward to most this year. So you can message me by emailing me at techblogwriter@outlook.com. You'll find all my social channels over at techblogwriter.co.uk. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find them nice and easily too. But you may or may not have noticed I'm getting a bit of a sore throat coming here. I'm getting a bit of a late night radio voice going on. So I'm going to rest my vocal cords. Hopefully I'll return again tomorrow with another guest. So thanks for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.